Well, it was kind of a rough weekend for the Blue Jackets. How can they bounce back from two disappointing losses? We're going to talk about that on today's Locked on Blue Jackets.
You're Locked on Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked on Blue Jackets, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get things started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked on Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. I also have to let you know this episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Now, not an ideal weekend for the Blue Jackets, not an ideal week for the Blue Jackets. After a really great performance against Winnipeg, they come back home and struggle. Losing in overtime, losing in regulation against the Flyers, losing in overtime against the Washington Capitals, and then another overtime loss against the Ducks, and then another regulation loss against the Carolina Hurricanes. And I talked about this a little bit kind of mid last week, I think, which is, it was about the Flyers game and the Capitals game. There's no shame in losing to the Capitals. They're the best team in the Eastern Conference right now. But that Philadelphia loss is frustrating because that's 2 points that you needed. Similar thing here. You 3 points away versus the Ducks. There's no shame in losing to Carolina. There's a little bit of shame in getting goalied by Dustin Tokarski, who hasn't been in the NHL in almost a year now. But I could have written the script for that. But Carolina's a good team. It's again, there's no shame in losing to Carolina, but because you 3 points away versus the Ducks, now you're on a 4-game losing streak, and it's going to get worse from here. Because next up you've got the Lightning, you've got the Devils, and then you've got the Flyers again. So 2 big division rivals that you need to take points off of, and the Lightning, who you barely beat last time because there was goalie insanity. But we'll talk about that kind of as the week continues. I want to talk about this weekend's games. The Ducks game was frustrating, which might be like my most used word about the Blue Jackets for the last little while here. But you're up, I want to say 2-0 against the Ducks. They score. Okay, no, I'm lying. You're up 2-1 against the Ducks at the end of the first period. They tie the game in the second period. You go ahead late, kind of halfway through the third. They tie it up late, and then they win in overtime. This should not be a game that is tied in the third period against the Ducks. They don't score a lot of goals. They've improved a little bit since the last time these two teams faced. I don't think they're actually 32nd in the league in goals against, or goals for per game anymore. But this is a game that you should have won, and you should have won easily. You can't. And, and I'm not putting all of this on Greaves, because I think I don't think he was as good as he was against the Capitals, but 4 goals on 27 shots. First goal, kind of a stupid one. Goes in, he gets crashed into. Somehow they get a goalie interference penalty out of it, despite the fact that it was Provorov that launched McTavish into Greaves. But is what it is. Second goal is fine. Third goal, deflection, or from out. I think it deflected off a Blue Jacket actually. So and then the overtime goal is what it is. Just 4 goals on 27 shots doesn't sound great, but I think Greaves played well, and I think it probably could have been worse if he wasn't in net, and kind of based on a lot of things. But the Blue Jackets are struggling right now. And I don't really know what the issue is. I don't really know what the solution is here, because I'm watching the games and I'm like, okay, they're not playing badly, the goaltending isn't like unforgivably bad. The defense isn't unforgivably bad. They're scoring an amount of goals. Like what's going on here? And I wonder if, and this is kind of more to the Carolina game than this game because it's a back to back. But like, I wonder if it's just kind of fatigue. The big movers and shakers for this team are all young kids. Like with the exception of Werenski, everyone else on this team that is kind of being a difference maker right now, I guess, and Sean Monahan as well, is like 23 or under. Like Cole Zellner just did his 250th game against Carolina, which feels insane, but like he's not even 22 until May. He's still very, very young, and he's on the older side of the kids. I think it might just be partially fatigue. And I think partially young team makes mistakes. I don't know that the line combination change-ups have made as much of a difference as I wanted them to. Like, and it feels like they're just they don't really have any other options. I'll be interested to see what happens when Chinakhov comes back, which hopefully should be soon. I think they were hopeful to have him for the weekend and then didn't. So like we'll see where he is. By the time the Blue Jackets play on, I want to say Tuesday is their next game, Tuesday or Wednesday. It'd be good to have him back. I think they've missed him. I think Tuesday against the Lightning. I think they've missed him. I think he'll add some more depth to this team. And it'll give them the option to potentially put that top line back together of Chinakhov, Monahan, and Marchenko. And then you can give Ken Johnson back to Adam Fantilli because I think those two work really well together. So I don't know who you put on the other end, like Voronkov probably on the other side, and then go from there. I don't know. But I think it's the problem is I think it's a combination of a lot of things. The Ducks game, and this is the other thing as well. Like the Blue Jackets keep finding ways to lose, and I've said this a lot. At the beginning of the season they were finding ways to win. Now they keep finding ways to lose, and this one was just kind of like in the grand scheme of things, it is a Western Division game. You got a point out of it. Fine. But I think it's because of the subsequent loss and the previous loss and kind of the shakiness of the whole week, really. It feels worse than it is. And that's something else that I've kind of been talking about, which I'm sure every day is kind of sick of hearing about by now, is that like in a vacuum, each individual game is kind of fine in a vacuum, but then you string them all together and you're like, okay, well, you should have beaten the Flyers. You should have, great to get a point against the Capitals. Should have beaten the Ducks. No shame in losing to the Hurricanes. However, it is frustrating to get a goal lead by Dustin Tokarski, who we'll talk about in a minute here. But like all four of those games kind of standing by themselves, fine, whatever. Like you can have a bad game against a division rival. It's not ideal. Like I think the Flyers game is the one that stings the most because they looked terrible. Despite the fact that it was a 5-3 final score, like it was a 5-1 game. They scored 2 late goals to make it look a little bit more respectable to people who didn't watch the game. But like standing on its own, this Ducks game, frustrating to not get 2 points, especially because you were leading with like 3-4 minutes to go. But at the end of the day, not the end of the world. Just frustrating again that it comes as like a third loss in a row. Blue Jackets now on a 4-game losing streak after Carolina, and again they've got some tough opponents ahead of them to see what happens there, because they've already done one 6-game losing streak this season. I would not like to do that again. However, up next you've got the Lightning. After that you've got the Devils, and then you get to play the Flyers again, who took your lunch money last time. So we'll see how it goes. Again, the Blue Jackets continue to be kind of terrible on the road, which is wildly frustrating. Again, we'll talk about that in a minute when we talk about the Carolina game. But like the Ducks game is what it is. Annoying, but I'm not gonna like. I am frustrated by it. I am annoyed by it, especially because the Ducks are below us in the standings. This felt like an extra point thrown away. Good to get 1 point. Should have had 2. So it is what it is. Let's take a quick break. When we get back, I want to talk about the Carolina game because this was frustrating in a different way. So we'll talk about that in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I want to tell you about Game Time because I don't know about you, but I love last-minute tickets to things. I'm really bad at planning, and sometimes I just like, oh, I'm free tonight, let's go do a thing. And I always check Game Time to see if there's anything fun on in my area. Game Time is the best ticketing service out there. It's the only one I use now. They've got a brand new feature called Game Time Picks, which makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. Basically, anything you need a ticket to get in the door with, Game Time will give you the best possible deal. You can toggle on all-in pricing as well, which shows you the total up front, so there's no surprise fees at checkout. And if you find tickets in your section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL. Terms apply. What time is it? Game Time. I've also got to tell you about FanDuel because step into the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if that $5 bet wins. FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL and all other sports, all in one place. I know bowl season is coming up, so if you want to put some money on that, FanDuel is the place to do it. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You don't have to have 17 different ESPN tabs open. It's great. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Again, if you win your first $5 bet, you're going to get $150 in bonus bets that you can spend on whatever you want. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. We are talking about the very bad, no good, terrible weekend that the Blue Jackets had. We talked about the Ducks game. I want to talk about the Carolina Hurricanes game because this felt like an understandable loss, right? Carolina's a really good, like on paper, Carolina's a really good team. The Blue Jackets somehow got away with a win last time. I think was it in the shootout when they when Kochetkov got taken out by friendly fire. And they put Spencer Martin in ice cold. And again, the Blue Jackets took 2 points and ran with it. This time, Dustin Tokarski. You could have written this with a script. You know, like I actually texted a friend and I was like, "Congratulations to Dustin Tokarski on his impending shutout against the Blue Jackets." To which he responded, "What do you mean Dustin Tokarski's back in the NHL?" You know, of course this was going to happen. You know, I think about it was a few years ago now, but was it Calvin Pickard? I believe, hadn't been in the NHL in like 3 seasons, had spent a bunch of time in the AHL and even down in the ECHL, came in, first game back in the NHL against the Blue Jackets and either shut them out or had like a 40 save performance or something crazy like that. Like, of course this was going to happen. Like, credit to Tokarski, again, for, you know, making it back to the NHL. I know I said a year, but like reality, it's not that long because he was last in the NHL it was February 2023. Excuse me. So it's been like over a year. And he was good. Like, I don't think, like, okay, credit to the rest of Carolina. I don't think Tokarski had a particularly difficult time of it. You know, like, yes, the shots on goal were even. It was 28-28, but Carolina's defense is pretty good. And I don't know that like I don't think that he didn't make any, like, he made a couple of like out of this world good saves, but I don't think he had a particularly difficult time of it. And that's not to say that the Blue Jackets weren't good. I think they were fine, but Carolina as a team they're just an extremely good team, you know. And I know they're kind of in a weird situation at the minute where they lost 5 of their last 7 games. They got in the win column last night, obviously. But Dustin Tokarski would need to be better than Elvis Merzlikins, and he was by a pretty big standard. Elvis Merzlikins, another pour from him, 4 goals on 28 shots. I think is that back-to-back bad games? Yeah. He wasn't great in Philadelphia either, which I think prompted the Jet Greaves recall. I'll be interested to see who they go with against Tampa. My guess is that they're going to keep going with Greaves. He didn't have a great night against the Ducks, but I think they're going to go. I just my gut instinct is that they're going to go with Greaves, but like this was the one area of the game to get back to the Elvis versus Tokarski thing. Like this was the one area of the game where you really should have outperformed the other guy. He hasn't been in the NHL for over a year. His first NHL game this season, like he signed late as well, I believe. Like I think he's only played about 4 games for the Wolves this season, which is the AHL affiliate of the Carolina Hurricanes. Like they signed him to an NHL deal when Kochetkov got hurt. Obviously, Freddie Anderson is out kind of semi long term, so they needed a guy. Spencer Martin wasn't getting it done. He's played 5 games for the Chicago Wolves. So he you could have written, like I said, you could have written this. Elvis needs to be better. Elvis needs to be better than Dustin Tokarski, and he wasn't. And like that's not the only thing that went wrong in this game, but it is like the main one, if I'm being honest. I will say credit to the Blue Jackets. They have had decent penalty kill numbers the past couple of games. They didn't allow a power play goal last night against Carolina. They didn't allow one against Anaheim. And I don't think they allowed one versus Washington either. So I think they're on a 3-game streak of not allowing a power play goal, which is great. Unfortunately, they also went 0 for 5 on the power play and allowed a shorthanded goal. That was the opening goal of the game. Sebastian Aho, shorthanded goal. That was one of those goals where sometimes I watch this team and it's like it's happening less this season than last season, but sometimes you could just watch a play develop and you just know that a goal is going to happen out of it. I watched that happen and I was like, this is going to be a goal. I thought it was going to be Seth Jarvis's goal. It wasn't. He passed it over to Aho. It was the right move. But like just you could see it unfolding kind of in slow motion. And I don't know if anyone else ever gets like that with this team, but sometimes it's like usually it's when they get stuck in their own zone or like if there's a defensive miscue or something like that, you can just kind of see the bad thing happening in slow motion. This time it was shorthanded breakaway or a shorthanded odd man rush, I should say. And there it went in. I also want to say Provorov and Severson were awful last night. Werenski was also pretty bad, but the Provorov and Severson pairing, like maybe this is just me, but I thought they were terrible. Defensively, none of the Blue Jackets were very good, I didn't think, but like after a stretch of really solid play by that pairing, it felt like sometimes that was a rough game for them, Offensively, no one really had anything. Great to see Dmitry Voronkov get a goal, especially after he had one called back for offside, I think, against the Ducks. Was it against the Ducks? Yes. So great to see him get one. That was a really nice pass from Marchenko, who I'm so glad that he's learned how to pass now. As funny as his rookie season was, where he had like 25 goals and 4 assists, seeing him rack up the assists now is good to see. I believe he's almost at 30 points now, which I don't think is a career high, but he's getting there. He's at 29 points right now. So he's overtaken Sean Monahan, who's on a little bit of a cold streak right now. Marchenko's career high is 42 points, so he's 13 off. And he's done it in 31 games. So again, he is on pace for a massive career year, which is great. These were very different games, is the thing. They both could have easily been wins, I thought. Less so the Carolina game, but we know the Blue Jackets can beat them. We've seen it, We saw it a couple of weeks ago when they won in the shootout. And Elvis was excellent in that game, I thought. So where do you go from here? How do you stop the skid? How do you avoid losing the game? How do you avoid losing Tuesday's game in another new and exciting way as this team continues to find new and exciting ways to lose? Let's talk about that in just a second here on Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I've got to tell you about Rocket Money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitor your spending, and help lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when you're using all of their features. I really love the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside any money for my future, so there's no more stressing about having to budget every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/LOCKEDON, rocketmoney.com/locked-on. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. Thanks for making us your first listen. Let's finish off today by talking a little bit about how this team can stop the skid. And we're not going to get into specifics because I want to talk about the Tampa Bay Lightning tomorrow specifically in preview of those two teams playing. But this team looks very different to the team that started the season, and partially that's, there was injuries. I didn't even talk about the injuries in the Carolina game. They played that entire game with 5 defensemen basically. And then they lost a forward late as Kevin Labanc was injured. Jack Johnson got a stick in the eye, I think, halfway through the first period. So that looked extremely, extremely painful. So I don't know what his situation is going to be like for Tuesday. So we might see Jordan Harris back again, which will make a different look of the defense at least. The defense actually has been mostly stable. They've been swapping around that third pairing, but it seems like they've settled on Werenski, Fabro, Provorov, Severson as their top 4. Presumably when they move Provorov nearer the deadline, Christensen will jump back up and play with Severson, which is good because I like the Christensen-Severson pairing earlier on. And then I don't know where they'll go from there. But the forwards look very, very different. And I think that's what they need to get back to. I know that they changed them up when they stopped working a little bit, but I do think that they need to go back to, and I think I talked about this a little bit earlier, it'll help when Chinakov's back, so I do think it'll allow them to go back to that Chinakov, Monahan, Marchenko first line, which was extremely, extremely good. And then really, again, all you need to do is figure out, you've just got to figure out how to get Adam Fantilli going. He's in a slump in a big way right now. This happened, second-year player, still very young. It's fine. Calm down. We're not worried. They need to find a way to get him going. I do think the best way to do that is Johnson. I like that Johnson, Fantilli, Sillinger line a lot, but I know that they like Sillinger a lot more down the middle. So I wonder if he put Voronkov there instead. The Sillinger, Olivier, Danforth line was fun, or was it Aston Reese? I think they swapped those two out. Danforth out with an lower body injury as well at the minute, actually. So that's another lineup shuffle that needs happening. And then the fourth line is you can kind of rotate whoever you want in and out of there. But if it was me, I would go back to those lines, the lines that they had earlier on this season. Those are the lines that I thought were the most effective. And if you figure out your goaltending, then things will look better. I don't know what the answer to the goaltending is. I know that they don't like Everson doesn't like carrying 3 goalies, which is fair enough. But what I thought was interesting was that they were like, okay, well, Elvis is tired, Tarasov is rusty, so we called up Greaves, and then Tarasov hasn't actually dressed for the last 3 games. It's been Greaves backed up by Elvis, or it's been Elvis backed up by Greaves. So I don't know what the plan is for Tarasov. I wonder if they're going to let him sit for a little bit and then send him to Cleveland to do a conditioning stint, kind of like that Pittsburgh did with Tristan Jarry. They sent him to the AHL for a couple of weeks to work on his game. He came back, and now he's actually getting, he's not unplayably bad anymore. So I wonder if they do that with Tarasov. They might send him down again, let him play, 3-6 games, however many you're allowed to in the 2-week conditioning stint. I don't know if they'll get 6 games in 2 weeks, but as many games as they can fit in basically for him. And then allow them to roll Greaves and Merzlikins for a little while. I don't think they're going to risk putting Tarasov on waivers yet. But it might be coming, especially if Greaves continues to play well. Again, he was not amazing versus the Ducks, but Neither was anyone else. So like I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt for that one. I think we'll see him in against Tampa Bay tomorrow, which will be interesting to see. He was excellent against the Capitals, so I'm hoping to see another great game from Jet Greaves, because this team needs a goalie, and right now the goalies they have aren't getting it done. So they might as well give Greaves a really long, good look before they start looking outside the organization, because I think that's going to be the next step, is going to be making a trade. And that's going to be tough, because the goalie market is impossible to predict. The goalie market is makes no sense, and you're going to overpay, probably. And I don't know that there are teams that are looking to get rid of a goalie without, like, basically, if the Blue Jackets want to pick up a goalie, they're going to have to overpay. If they want to move Elvis, for example, they're going to have to add something to his contract, because that contract is huge, and no one's going to want to take that on unless you do like a Elvis for, I don't know, John Gibson swap or whatever. I don't know off the top of my head what John Gibson's contract looks like, but I think it's reasonably big. Let's see. Yeah, it's the same length as Elvis, but it's $1 million more. So like maybe you don't do that. But like a similar-ish. I don't know who off the top of my head. Again, Tristan Jarry's another example, but again, his contract I think runs longer maybe than Elvis's, and is also more expensive. Yeah, he's not a year. He's got 4 years left on his deal, at about the same as Elvis has on his. So neither of those are great options. So if they can figure it out, if they can have Greaves, and if they can keep Greaves, like, and if they can get progress and results with Greaves, then that makes Don Waddell's job much easier. That's kind of all I've got for today. Tomorrow, like I said, we'll talk about tomorrow night's game against the Tampa Bay Lightning. We'll take a look at how those guys are doing, and we'll talk about why this game is not going to be like the last time these two teams faced off against each other. So we'll do that tomorrow. Thank you for listening to this episode, for making it your first listen of the day every single day. Locked on Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms, on YouTube and on SiriusXM. I've been Jay Foster. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster. You can find me on Blue Sky, same place, except without the underscore. And you can find the show on Twitter at LO_Blue Jackets. If you have comments, questions, criticisms, email me at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. And until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.